Okay, welcome everyone. I have been so looking forward to this event because one of my all-time knitting world heroes is back with a book that I think the last time Deborah was here was to talk about finishing school, maybe.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I didn't think there was any book that I would love as much as finishing school. And Deborah proved me wrong by doing this amazing book that belongs on every knitter's shelf and actually in their knitting bag or next to their knitting chair. Good measure, knit a perfect fit every time. Welcome, Deborah. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Wow, Beth, thank you so much. I'm I'm so pleased that you enjoyed finishing school so much, and even more delighted that you like this book. This was such a labor of love, and I look forward to contributing it to the knitting community. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, it's just such an honor to have you back. And I think one of the really amazing things about your books is, you know, f- for most books, they're knitting books, they're either like how-to and technique books or they're project books, and you manage to get them both. Although, I mean, this is 144 pages, so people are definitely getting their money's worth.
Well,
And that,
Beth, it's hard not to do both when you're doing a book about um, a concept as broad and complex as fit, because you can't just write about it and not show something that reflects what that concept is. So it was a lot of thought went into what would be the best projects to, represent the different aspects that I present in the book.
yeah, and it was really interesting to me in this book because I knit and I knit designs other people do, but
Mhm.
I also design, and the concepts in this book are equally applicable to knitting for yourself or knitting for gifts for people. Of
Mhm.
course, you want, if you're knitting garments, then it's likely somebody you know really well, maybe a boyfriend or a husband or your sister or your mom or your kids. And it's about, you know, you end up with a project or end result that people will actually wear because it's going to fit them. But it's really, and also the book is about how to take other people's designs and customize them to make sure that they flatter you as well based upon your body type and your preferences.
Exactly. And the whole point of the book was, you know, I've over the years I've talked to so many disappointed knitters who, they love a sweater pattern, they see something that they love and they make it based on some intuition they have about what size they should make. And still it was a disappointing experience. And with time and the cost of money, the money that it costs to buy a great yarn, it's even more disappointing. So it was something that I really wanted to address. How do you approach a pattern, or even a design of your own, and know that it's going to work for your body, or as you say, for somebody that you'd like to knit for?
Yeah, exactly. And Kate says she's so excited to hear about this book that she needs help getting the right fit before wasting time on something that doesn't work, which is what you're talking about. And I think the problem, and I think the reason that knitters either give up or don't even attempt garments is they're so concerned that it's not going to fit, or
Right.
they knit one sweater and it ends up, with droopy shoulders and it falls off their neck and it bags
Or it just
around the
doesn't.
hips.
Right, it doesn't actually encompass their body in the right way. And the funny thing is that we buy garments all the time that fit us. But when we make garments, they don't always fit us. So what is that? I asked myself, and I think it's because,
Oh, hang
you're
on.
on a pattern for size.
Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, and Kate says, and you can try garments you buy, you can
Exactly.
try them on first, and if they don't fit, you just either buy another size or move on to another garment. But when
Right.
you
But
knit that, you're well into that project. if
right.
and if you haven't done the groundwork, by the time you know it's not going to fit,
Exactly. So
years
it was all
too
about
late.
disappointment, avoiding disappointment. Everybody, so many people have said to me, "Oh, I knitted." In fact, someone in Chicago at VK Live just came up to me and they said, I've only knitted one sweater and it didn't fit, and then I gave up. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's terrible because I'm a person who's designed and made and created thousands of knitted garments, and not all for model sizes either. And as you can see in the book, we chose to work with people of different sizes as well, not just your typical waif-like model size.
Yeah, and when we do the preview of the book, people will see that there are models of all different shapes, which is
Hmm.
nice because, everything looks good on a size 2. I mean, let's just
Exactly.
right? I mean, if you're 5'10" and a size 2, I mean, you could wear a grain sack and belt it and you're still good to go. But, for the rest of the world, and including those of us who might be a little on the fluffier side, you know, it can be a challenge to kind of see what a garment might, or picture what a garment might look like
Exactly.
on a
So
normal body.
there's the book presents a kind of a two-pronged approach. And one aspect is, of course, know yourself, know your body, know what your measurements are, but also understand why those measurements are important. It's not just knowing what they are, but why. And also the other aspect of the book is garment shapes. How do different garment shapes fit, and what are the necessities? What do you need to know about those garment shapes to combine your measurements with that garment type and understand how to set out for a good fit before you begin to knit.
Yeah, and Kate and Mary were both talking about it'd be really nice to know what size the model is and what she's wearing, which actually I think, if you have my first book, the Deep South Knitting, I actually did that where I gave the models measurements and what size they were wearing, because I think one of the tough things, and you deal with this in your book, is talking about, ease and how to
Mm-hmm.
choose a size, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of patterns just tell you finished bust sizes and it'll be like 34, 36, 38, 40, which is not the size you should be knitting.
No, no, absolutely. And I go into this whole aspect, Beth, of garment types and uh, what is fabric weight, what kind of ease do you need to anticipate, what kind of a silhouette are you, not only what kind of silhouette do you want for your sweater, but what kind of inherent silhouette does the garment have that you want to make? And sometimes we don't realize that fit has to do with all of these little uh, bits of the equation that add up to that final good fit. To mention to address the whole notion of what size the models are, you can notice in the book, in the instructions for the projects, that all of them list what size is being shown and what is being worn by the model.
Yeah,
So
that's always
that was
helpful.
important. Yeah, that was important.
Well, I think we should take a look at the book, and
Don't you love the cover? Isn't the
I
cover beautiful? It was designed
yes.
by Diane Lamfrin, who also designed the cover for finishing school, and together they're such a pretty pair. I'm so
Yeah.
delighted.
And and normally I don't spend too much time looking at the covers. I'm more interested in the guts, but I
Yeah.
was really taken by how this is all kind of put together, and it's really a beautiful
Yeah, and
beautiful
Diane
book
asked
cover.
me, she asked me to send her some stuff, and all of the stuff on the cover is from my desk and from the projects that were in the book, and the buttons too, and all of so it's real stuff. It's not just trumped up graphics, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I do like the little scissors there.
Oh,
So, yeah. I'm it's so weird the things that people collect. For me it's buttons, and I love Seiju scissors because they're
mm.
just too cute. But yeah, but it's this looks like a neat and organized desk of a designer.
Well, you've got to have your tools, Beth,
You
and
do.
the most important one, of course, for fit is the tape measure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can check your gauge swatch there too. So
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
that too. I forgot about that, right?
yeah, it's amazing to me. A lot of knitters who have really crappy fitting sweaters never gauged swatches.
Elizabeth just made a question in her and said, does this deal with children's sizes? What I want to say to you, Elizabeth, is the book presents everything from a female point of view, a woman, but every concept in the book can be applied to men and children as well. Even your dog, I would think, in terms of, it's a process and a conceptual way of looking at fit, so that if you understand what measurements relate to certain parts of a sweater, then it doesn't matter if that sweater is for a woman or for a man or a child.
Fit is fit is fit is fit.
Exactly, exactly. You have to understand the process.
Yeah, so when I was trying to figure out how to like get across what is in this book, I mean it was a little different because normally it's about the projects, and so that's pretty easy. I picked like my 10 favorite and then off we go. But this book is, I mean, the projects are kind of illustrative of the whatever the topic is in terms of fit. So I kind of pulled both things together. So hopefully that
Yeah, that was great.
people get an idea of what's in the book. But I will tell anybody who's in the room today or who is coming back and watching this on YouTube is this is a small part of what's in the book. Otherwise, I would have had to keep Deborah here all afternoon. Not that I would have minded, but I'm sure she's got other things to do. Um,
Well, let me just say one thing, Beth, is that a lot of all of, as you say, all of the projects are illustrative of certain concepts, but throughout the book we have these little sections like math magic, how to calculate certain things, how do you make sure your upper arm sleeve is correct, all of the little kind of sidebars that go along with the book, fit tips, uh-oh, something didn't work right, why? So all those little extras that we probably won't have time to talk about today are some little extras that I wanted to include along with those major concepts.
yeah. So there are great projects in this book, but they are not they're not like the sum and total of what is in here. So, and hopefully people will get that from what I pulled from the book today. So, and I did pull this schematic about measuring, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that I think getting knitters to measure themselves is such a hurdle. I think getting women to measure themselves, unless they are size zeros, is tough. But I think also we all think we're bigger than we are.
And
So
you know what, too, Beth? I've been teaching a few classes where everyone has been super, super excited about having their measurements taken, which I think is a great thing. And I always feel sort of you go into the process in a totally non-judgmental way, both about yourself and who's going to be taking your measurements. You just want to get it down on paper, because when it comes down to the end product, it's all about math. So we really want to have someone else take our measurements so that we understand we're standing properly, we're not looking down and twisting the tape measure, and everyone so far in all the workshops that I've been teaching, people of all shapes and sizes have been super excited about taking their measurements the correct way. And also, something that we'll talk about very briefly is creating a body schematic that allows you to compare your measurements to the schematic drawing of a sweater that you want to make. So until you take your measurements and know how to do it well and know the truth of it, you can't make that comparison that's so crucial to getting a good fit.
yeah, and especially, and I think in sweaters, it's like across the shoulders and the
Mm-hmm.
armholes are so important in getting a sweater that actually fits the top of your body. And I think that's a place that virtually nobody measures,
Right. And
right?
Beth, that is a point that I made in the book and I've made in workshops, is that in our culture, we are so torso conscious, bust, waist, and hip. People are fixated I'm too big or I'm too small or whatever. But really, one of the most important aspects of getting a good fit is in the neckline, cross shoulder, armhole, and around the upper body. So with those are very often measurements that we don't refer to.
Yeah, not at all. And the only time that you ever look at that is when you're blocking the sweater when you're finished knitting it.
And
So,
it's too
which
late.
it's a little too late. There's only so much you can adjust in blocking. But for the rest of your
Right,
body, you're knitting a stretchy garment. So,
exactly.
it's a little less important, but definitely no, I mean nobody measures across the shoulders and, the armhole
Mhm,
depth. And so I think that's just,
mhm.
it's not it, when you think about it, it makes sense, but it's not one of those things that I think that we routinely think about in terms of choosing a size from a pattern that somebody else has produced for us. So,
Exactly, right.
yeah.
So, yeah, so we do present a kind of complicated chart schematic drawing here that shows you where those good places are to measure. And there's also a list, to capture those measurements. And once again, all of these apply to children and men too. There are no differences here.
Yeah, I mean, because you're still going to get a blocking schematic for any pattern that you knit
Yep,
that somebody else designed.
exactly.
So, yeah.
Right. And
So,
I always say be very wary of a pattern that doesn't give you that kind of touchstone. And if your pattern that you loved doesn't have a schematic, I teach you how to make a schematic so that you can compare your measurements to that schematic in the pattern.
yeah, it's just really important for fit. So, all right, so let's get to, and because there are sections in the book are fit labs, and where it's a concept or an idea or something that goes into great fit, get making sweaters or designing sweaters that are going to really fit. And I just happen to also love the project that goes with this because this just looks like your favorite sweatshirt, but it fits and you could wear it out to dinner.
Well, you know what? This was so funny, Beth, because I was totally unprepared for what happened with the inspiration for this sweater. A friend of mine and I were out shopping, and we stopped at a store that sold very, very inexpensive clothes. And my friend said, "Look, two sweaters for $5." It was a sale or a special, and I said, "Oh, Rosa, you can have one, but I don't need one." And she was like, "No, no, we'll each have one. They'll be the same." And so I got the sweater home. It was a crummy acrylic. It was really cheap fabric, but I tried it on and it fit me in a way that no sweater had ever fit before. I just loved it. And I wore it to death till it fell apart. But before I did that, I took the measurements of that sweater and I translated them to schematic form and I made the sweater based on it. And so I always encourage people when you're learning about fit and learning what fits you and what looks good on you, those two things go hand in hand. Why not take the measurements of a sweater that does fit you well and make another one from those dimensions?
Yeah, and because I kind of have a rule, I won't knit anything that I could buy at a Target,
Yep.
or Macy's, right? I don't, if I could walk into a department store and buy it, I don't knit it for myself. But
But on the other hand, Beth, if it
yeah,
doesn't, if it fits you in a way that
yes.
clothing that you make doesn't fit, then you want to know why that is.
Absolutely. So if you're a little nervous about fit, I mean, going into Target and trying on sweaters and buying something that fits you the way you would like that really fits you the way you would like your favorite shapes of sweaters to fit you, or if it fits you.
And oftentimes, Beth, we already own that garment.
Yes. Or you own like 12 hand knit sweaters, none of which fit and sit in the back of your closet. So you're trying to avoid that.
Mhm.
That's
And
what this book is
sometimes,
for.
yes, exactly. And sometimes the first step is to actually recreate a sweater that fits you well, which I did here. So now I have another sweater that fits me well, but it's in a nicer yarn and I've embellished it in a different way. And it's a canvas for adding your own touches to things, but you know that schematic works for you. Of course, you do have to translate one thing. You have to be careful that the garment that you're making, that you're inspired by, has the same weight as the yarn that you're going to use. If it doesn't, then we have to get into those issues of ease.
Yeah, and like if you're trying on a really fine gauge sweater and you think you're going to knit it in a bulky weight yarn, you're going to be disappointed.
No. So then
Yeah,
you have to go by the tips that are included in the book for helping you make a decision about fabric weight.
yeah. It's what a great idea if you have, and especially if you have a sweater you really love and
Yeah.
you're wearing it out and you would kind of like another one, but you want to make it.
Hmm.
That's really a great idea to like duplicate your favorite store-bought sweater. So,
Yes.
yeah. So I grabbed this section, the using lines of sight, and I remember there on the top small inset picture on this page, I remember this hoodie in Vogue Knitting and thinking,
Hmm.
oh, that's so clever how those stripes really, of course, this girl doesn't need help, but in terms of, that up and down line, because I'm sure,
Yes, the
yeah,
vertical line. And, I talk about in the book, I'm such a democratic person. I feel like, everyone should wear what they want to wear, what they love to wear. But there are certain cultural guidelines. Like people say, well, I would never wear stripes. But then I said, well, how can I create a project, as I did with that Vogue knitting hoodie, where we have some vertical lines that sort of offset that widening effect by the stripes? So, the book addresses some of those cultural things and some of the things that you may just throw out the window. Who cares? If I love stripes, I'll wear them no matter what size I am. If I'm thin or heavy or in between, as long as you love stripes, you'll wear them. But for those people who are concerned about the certain do's and don'ts, I have a section that addresses those.
yeah.
But I'm glad that you picked up on those vertical stripes on the hoodie because it was all planned to kind of offset that cultural uh, thing where people feel they're not comfortable wearing stripes.
Oh yeah, we were always taught that stripes are going to add 20 pounds and they're going to highlight the
Hmm.
parts you don't like and they're going to make
Yeah,
your hips look wider. And it really all depends on the stripes and the color and the width of
yeah.
the stripes and all kinds of other things. So, but it was kind of a hard and fast rule. You don't wear horizontal stripes. And this shows you how, horizontal stripes come in very different forms.
Hmm.
So I thought this was a really interesting section of the book. Oh, and Kate says she likes using a sweater that you have as a template, which I agree. So, and it's actually, and if you're knitting for somebody else, like if you're knitting for a friend or your man or whatever and you want it to be a surprise, if you can borrow or steal one of the sweaters out of their closet that they wear a lot, that's also,
Why not? It's not cheating. It's just making sense.
yeah, you want them to wear what you knit too. So
Exactly,
otherwise, you'll
exactly.
never knit them anything else because if they don't wear the first one, you'll never make another one. So,
Right.
yeah, and then this Fit Lab section was on analyzing a pattern, and this little project here is beautiful with the pleated peplum and the little rib detail on the sides. It's just so pretty. But tell us about this section of the book.
Well, it's interesting because I was looking back at a sweater that I had done in the 80s for Vogue Knitting and saying, well, how would I alter that sweater for a more different kind of fit? And this sweater is also emblematic of a garment that has a varied, what I call a varied silhouette. It's closing at the waist, it flares at the hips, it has a sleeve that's wider at the top and narrow at the bottom. So the original sweater was a bateau neckline, a boat neck, and I think that most women find a V-neck more flattering, so I redesigned it to have that. And also I changed the sleeve from being a very close fitting sleeve to one that had a little more ease. So I wanted in this project for people to see what my thought process was. So how do you choose a pattern maybe, and even a pattern that you already know well because you've made it before, and alter it slightly to for the concepts of ease, silhouette, and just flattering details like changing the neckline.
Yeah. So that you're not welded to designer's view of this sweater is you can make
Exactly. Like I'm
it.
always delighted when people tell me that they've taken one of my patterns and done something different with it. That's why we're creative knitters, you know. We just love looking at something and saying, well, how would I make that? And for me, that's exciting to share that process where someone who might not have done this before gets a little confidence in terms of how would I go about altering a pattern for the web
Yeah.
or even a detail.
Well, and I know when I first started knitting garments, when I moved from scarves and afghans and household items, and I moved to garments, is when I would be going through a magazine or a book, I'd say, "Oh, I really love that sweater, but I can't wear turtlenecks or I can't wear crew necks because I'm claustrophobic." So,
Hmm.
it was like I would look for things that had V-necks on them because that's what I wear. And otherwise, I would just ignore all the other patterns in the book,
Right.
right?
And you shouldn't necessarily choose a pattern just because it has a V-neck, but why not choose a garment silhouette that you like and then create a V-neck?
Exactly. And I think that's kind of where this book takes people is like just because you don't like the neckline on this doesn't mean that you can't knit it in a way that you're going to like. So, which it's really empowering, I think is the
Yes.
thing is it's this book really empowers knitters to create something that they're going to love,
And
which
just understand the concepts that go into it so that, you know, if you were to read the book and sort of let those concepts sink in, you'll never look at another sweater pattern the same way again. I guarantee you that, Beth.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It really changes how you look at the patterns and shape and and it really makes you think about what would I do with this to
Hmm.
make it something that I would wear, not only
Hmm.
wear but love, because isn't that the point, right?
Yes, exactly. We want
Yeah,
to love we want to love the knitting and we want to love when it's done.
yeah, and we want people to say, wow, that sweater's really pretty, and you say, oh, I made it, so because
Yeah.
aren't I clever?
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
exactly. So I grabbed this part of Fit Lab to kind of show, because I love this variations on a theme, is how you can kind of take the same idea and change it up. And so tell us about this section of the book.
Well, the sweaters that you see in the sweater that you see on the upper left of the screen was a sweater I did several years ago for Vogue Knitting, which was hugely popular,
It's
and it
gorgeous.
had the kind of it was close-fitting silhouette in the upper body, but it was slightly oversized in the lower sleeves and body, and I think it was a sweater that appealed to a lot of people because it was flattering in the upper body, and then it didn't draw attention to the width of the lower body. It just sort of had a graceful flow to it. And I wanted to take that sweater and use those pattern stitches in different ways. And you can see how in the lower left, I made a close fitting sweater that has very strong vertical lines. You could still wear, any figure type could still wear that. Even though it's close fitting, the strong vertical lines are very flattering. Then in the upper right, we have a different piece that still uses the same stitches, but uses them in a different way. Now, I had actually planned this sweater to fit a smaller model, and this kind of shows you where choice comes into it. On a smaller model, this jacket fit also, and it looked slightly, it had more classic fit. Here on a larger gal, it has a closer fit. So you too have to look at a pattern in that way. You have to say, well, how do I want this garment to fit me? It may be shown as slightly oversized, but I may want to wear it more close to the body. So you have that kind of option when choosing, you know, the measurements or the size of a pattern. The little sweater at the lower section isn't part of this whole variations on a theme, but uh, it has pattern stitches that go side to side, you know, vertical. But excuse me, the sweater itself is knitted side to side, whereas these other sweaters are knitted from bottom to top. But that isn't to say you
Oh,
don't have to consider the same thing when you the steps when whether you're knitting from top down or knitting from the bottom up or knitting as with this little sweater side to side.
Yeah, so pretty. I love that the original version of that is just something that's going to look good on everybody. And I just love the sleeves on
I
it. I
think
think it's
so. And so, that's something too that intrigues me when I look at sweaters. I say, well, why does that garment look good on everybody? And that's something we have to look at in our own clothing and our sweaters as we learn to make them fit better. When you discover something that works, try to make that analogy with another pattern.
yeah, really pretty.
Thank
So,
you.
and then on to raglan. So this was the next Fit Lab
Yeah, and
section.
I'm so excited about this section because somebody before I started before I started writing this book, someone mentioned to me that women with large busts can't wear raglan sweaters, and I thought to myself, why is that true? Why is that true? I don't think that's true. So I did a lot of measuring of people and asking people questions, and talking about with myself an inner dialogue about like what is it about a raglan that wouldn't fit a large busted woman. And so I came to a lot of conclusions which I share here in the book about the kinds of lines that raglans have and what a raglan that might be more angled towards the center of the body isn't as flattering for a large busted woman as a raglan that has a more vertical line, which you can see in this sweater. This raglan hardly leans inward at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it allows space in the body. And so what are we talking about? We're learning about what qualities a raglan has and how do they apply to us and who we are and what our measurements are. So that was what this Fit Lab was all about.
Yeah, and the sweater is just really pretty too.
Oh, thank you.
That wide kind of boat neckline or ballet neckline is just really flattering. I love sweaters that expose the collarbones because I think that's just a really pretty part of the body.
It
So,
is. And also you'll notice in this sweater that I made a point of talking about the finishing and that band around the contrasting band shares the same raglan shaping as the garment does below in the pieces below. And that's a way to continue the shaping of the garment into the upper arm. And those of you who will read the book eventually will learn about my pet peeve with regards to raglans and how to make them work better for you.
oh, great. So, and Kate says she always struggles with changing the sleeves to be the style I want. So, Kate, you need to get this book because you'll only knit things that look the way you want them to, which
Well,
is
Kate, I made a point of talking about different kinds of sleeves and the different kinds of armholes that attach to the bodies of different kinds of garments. Once you understand that, it's so much easier.
yeah, because that's kind of the point is that you'll never look at a pattern and say, "I love that sweater, but I wish that sleeve was wider, or I wish that sleeve was longer." You could,
I want to empower people, Beth,
yeah,
to actually be able to take a pattern and make it work for them.
yeah, exactly. Which it's like life's too short, right, to
Yes.
be limited in what you're going to knit. So I pulled this section because I think this is, especially for people who, yeah, Kate says she needs to get the book. Yes, you do. For people who always wear a certain kind of neckline or who just don't like a certain kind of neckline, is how you can change this. You can take a sweater and change it up. Like for me, that low V is my favorite neckline. And if I just looked at this sweater, and as much as I love the sweater and the texture is spectacular, and I saw it with a crew neckline, I'd be like, no, it's too close.
See, exactly, Beth.
Yeah.
So what I did was this sweater originally appeared in Knit Simple, and in the book it was going to be just an example of what we call a modified drop shoulder, a sleeve cap that's not super high. It's a more relaxed sleeve cap. But then I realized that this was a perfect opportunity to talk about changing necklines. And you can see that I made these little kind of, they're life size. You can see them in back of the model. They were on the mannequins. I made these life size changes to this very specific neckline. As you say, the first one is a deep V, the other one is a little more of a crew neck. The pink has a mock turtleneck, and then the green in the lower right has a kind of tuxedo front. And I wanted to make the point that, by using your schematic drawing and studying your pattern ahead of time, there's no reason that you can't change the neckline of any given sweater.
Yeah, and Shannon says she's always wanted to be able to do this, which now you can. Kate loves that you show the pictures of the differences. And Elaine says that V-necks are her Achilles heel. She always has a trouble getting them to lie flat and
Hmm.
calculating the decreases. So, Elaine, you need this book. It'll fit.
Yeah, and I give a simple little tip in the book about how to decide how big or wide to make your neckline. And then once you do this little trick with the string, sort of forming a V-neck or a crew neck in a certain shape, you can actually take the measurements of that thing that you've created on your own body and compare it to the measurements in a schematic, so that getting a V-neck that's just the right depth for you is so easy if you just have this process.
Yeah, Roxy says that's her wonderful tip, which I agree. I had never heard of using that, which is obviously a lot easier than trying to use a stiff tape measure as well.
Yes, and you always want to use a flexible tape measure, but you want to use. I actually presented that tip years ago in my book Designing Knitwear, which also gives some information about garment types as well. But having a piece of string and laying it out in a certain way on your own body allows you to kind of visualize that neckline ahead of time.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a great idea. And for people who are watching this, that's probably just worth being here. Just that little piece of information. So, and this I think is one of this next Fit Lab is fit with patterning in mind. And I think that there is, um, it's interesting where people decide, they're looking at a pattern that's knit in stockinette and they think, well, I'm going to put cables or ribbing in here. Is how different a garment that creates. And I think so. Really, this section of the book, I think, is invaluable in terms of like when you're going to do something that's going to dramatically change the gauge in one part of your sweater, is like how to basically make changes to accommodate that. So tell us about this.
Well, it was interesting because both of these sweaters have the bodies of them have the exact same number of stitches, but they both fit in different ways. The brown sweater at the left has a looser, uh, not body conscious fit, whereas the sweater on the right is a tighter ribbing that almost has the same measurement as the body underneath it. So the whole point of this was that when you do substitute pattern stitches, you can get a different effect. Both of the cables had the same number of stitches, and since cables almost always share a similar gauge, some are tighter than others, I made the point that sometimes you could substitute a different cable for one that's already in your pattern. But ribbing is such an interesting fabric, and a lot of women say, oh, I would never wear a ribbed sweater because I don't want something that would cling. But if you have a sweater that has a looser type ribbing, like this lace rib that's in the brown sweater on the left, you can get a different effect than if the sweater had a very close body conscious rib.
Yeah, and Elizabeth is saying that there's a design she wants to knit, but the neck's too small, and that she needs this book to help her alter the directions, which I agree. Because it's a shame when you fall in love with a design, but you discard it because like for me, like the neck is too high or it's
Mm-hmm.
just too tight. So, and in that one, the sweater is Fair Isle design too, which we're going to talk in a little bit about making alterations when you're working in a design.
Right.
And then Elaine wants to know. I actually know an Elaine Gross. I wonder, Elaine, do we know each other? I didn't know she knit though. In the book, she says you talk about inserting zippers. Oh, do you talk about inserting zippers like this textured rib cardigan?
Oh, well, you know what? I didn't go into a lot of finishing techniques, but because my book Finishing School, the one that came before this, has a whole giant section on zippers because I'm crazy about them. I love them, and I think that they're the easiest things to put in when you know how. So I would suggest that you just check that book out for zippers. But zipper, in terms of fit, is a wonderful thing because it also has that sort of elongating effect, and it has a beautiful way of enhancing the front of any sweater. I'm just crazy about zippers, so I could go on forever about them.
Yeah, and it's just such a perfect fit for that ribbed sweater. It's
And I always
beautiful.
suggest that people always go to zipperstop.com because you can
Yes.
have your zippers custom cut to exact measurement. And if you know exactly what your schematic is, and you can have your zipper made ahead of time.
Yeah, and it's a great resource because they have a billion colors
Hmm.
and you can get rhinestone zippers, you can get them in any finish. They're just yeah, that's
And you see the zipper there that has the ring. I had them make that zipper specially with that ring, and they'll do it for anybody. It's great.
yeah, and it's not expensive, which was the real surprise for me.
And
So,
they deliver quickly.
yes, and because I needed a really, really long one to go around a 36-inch square pillow, and
Hmm.
no problem.
They're
No
great.
problem. Yeah. So, and then I pulled this Fit Lab section, designing with darts,
Hmm.
and the um, the shape on this sweater is so beautiful. I had to include it.
Oh,
Yeah. So talk about this section of the book.
well, this is interesting. I wanted to talk in the book about a couple of dressmaker techniques. People who don't sew might call them different things, but in sewing, because it's not always a flexible, stretchy fabric like in knits, people use a technique called a dart at the bust because uh, it allows the sweater to have more fabric length than uh, if you don't use a dart. And the way a knitter would do this is to short row. So is the original sweater that you see in blue on the left appeared in Vogue Knitting, and you can see the model is very flat chested. She's beautiful, very waif-like model. And I wanted to redo this sweater for a model who had a larger bust and who was also a larger size. So you'll see the yellow sweater, and there are other photos in the book too. They're both button back sweaters. The yellow sweater incorporates a dart at the bust line that allows her to have extra fabric to accommodate her body. I also deal with vertical darts in the book and shaping the sides of a garment with either an interior dart or having shaping at the sides.
Yeah, and Kate says she loves this side cut. She thinks it's a cool detail, which I do too.
Yeah, you cast on at the center and you gradually, add stitches either side, and then you add your trim afterwards when the sweater is done. I love adding trim afterwards. It's become my favorite way of working with trims on sweaters because sometimes you'll finish a sweater and you'll say, I wish I had done different ribbing or a different trim at the lower edge. Well, if you don't do your trim at the lower edge first, then when the sweater pieces are done, you can decide what you like best later.
Yeah, exactly. And you can think about it, try it on, and make some choices.
Yes,
But I love
exactly.
the idea of, because so many women who are larger busted tend to wear sweaters that hang because they have to
Hmm.
accommodate their bust sizes. But to use that short roast to allow them to wear sweaters that fit better and just
Hmm.
accommodate the breasts
Hmm.
is a really nice thing. And so if you're not flat chested,
And
yeah.
another point I like to make too, Beth, is that a lot of larger women like to wear close-fitting garments, and that's their choice, and it looks great. And you can see here that when a garment is made to accommodate the wearer's measurements, it looks great whether it's drapey or whether it's close-fitting.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really pretty. So, and then, we were talking a little bit earlier. I said, hang in there. We'll talk about shaping inside your pattern stitches, which, not only just, yeah, it says, um, yeah, Kate says the one time a flatter chest is good is is that you don't need darts. Um, so to shape within the pattern, whether it's color work or whether it's a stitch pattern, but so there's a fit lab on shaping in pattern stitches, and this really does look like that marbleized paper, which when I was in Florence, this they make a lot of paper there, and this marbleized paper is just such a big deal, like in the fronts of books. And so when I looked at this, I immediately knew what it was. So, but
Well, you know,
tell,
I wanted to do it's a sim we see a lot of chevron type patterns that look very geometric, and I wanted to this pattern is actually a kind of a zigzag lace that has a chevron quality to it, and I wanted to get away from that typical chevron look, if you know what I mean. And so
yeah,
by altering the number of rows within the stripes, and also by this is knitted top down, so we start with narrow uh, lace panels, and then we gradually increase the lace panels so that the skirt flares. And I talk about how to accommodate your hip measurement, how wide you might want it at the lower edge. I mean, this could have been even wider if we wanted a kicky, more full skirt. But I talk about, top-down skirts and how that works. But also, to get back to what you were saying, Beth, is the whole last part of the book is really knitterly. It's about how once you know the measurements and the schematic, how are you going to alter your knitted fabric in a creative way to accommodate the changes you might want to make in a pattern. So I talk about working with motifs, changing a knitting pattern ratio or size, and all the visual tricks that go into, not only making a garment look better, but actually having fun with the knitting of it in terms of, altering your pattern stitches, not just the pattern itself, but the fabric itself.
yeah. And Kate says this is really beautiful, which I agree. And I want this skirt. I want it floor length, and I want to use some metallic yarns in it. I mean, it would be a really beautiful evening skirt.
Yes.
It's just really just such a showpiece. Just really,
Oh,
really,
well,
really
thank you.
beautiful.
I think this is currently the favorited project from the book on my Ravelry page, so everybody seems to have the same feeling about it. It's in a beautiful merino and silk blend, and I would like to make it for myself if I ever got a chance to make anything for myself.
Yeah, Shannon says this is gorgeous, which I agree. It's just a really spectacular project.
Well, thank you so much.
So, and I know everybody's going to stick around later because we're giving away a copy. Fran says that you have changed her view of sweater knitting completely.
Well, that's my goal, Fran. I hope it works.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, Fran had a knit changing experience today, so that's a good thing. So, if you want to see the rest of the projects in the book, as well as the 335 designs. And if you're on Ravelry, Deborah Newton has a designer page, which oddly enough is Deborah-Newton. That makes life simple. So you can
Yeah,
see,
I think my Ravelry name is Deborah Newton, all one word.
yeah, and you actually have a group on Ravelry, right? Do you
I
have a
believe
Ravelry group?
so. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, and you can see the rest of the projects, though, from the book, though, as I said, the projects are such a small part of what you get in this book. I mean, it is, yeah, and actually Mary says the patterns are wonderful. They're so pretty, which
Well,
I,
I tried to make the patterns. It's hard as an author and designer to have a concept and choose one design to represent that concept. It feels like closing doors when you finally settle on one design. You really want to have more than one concept, one sweater to show every concept. But I worked really hard to try to make an emblematic, iconic design that would kind of show what I was talking about. So hopefully it's somewhat successful.
I think you got there.
Thanks,
In
Beth.
my humble opinion, I think you got there. So I think that's not a problem. So of course, if you want to if you don't win a book today in the room, that we encourage you to call your local yarn store. And if they don't have it, then you should ask nicely, and then even more nicely, and keep asking why they don't have this book. But because knitters need this book, that's pretty plain. So, but if you just can't, you can't wait, you got to have it, you can come over to Planet Pearl and you can click on books, and you'll find there a link where you can buy the book and help support Planet Pearl with our little commission that Amazon gives it. And in case you didn't know, we have links to the corrections for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. If the book's in here, there's a link to its corrections. So because you know it's technical writing, things happen. So before you start a project, you should always check for errata. So, but anyway, so you can come over here and get it. If you don't win a book today, you can slide on over tomorrow. You'll see that this is my Planet Pearl Facebook page. You'll see that there's something scheduled for 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, which is I'll be giving away a second copy of Good Measure for a lucky person on Facebook. And so, yeah, so Elizabeth says this is awesome today. Mary says it's a great book, which I could not agree with you more.
Oh, thank you all so
Oh my
much.
gosh, lots of love. Mary's putting it on her Christmas list. So, which
Well,
if you
let me say this. I just want to thank everybody for their enthusiasm. And also, if you've already bought the book and you'd like me to sign it, Sixth and Spring, my publisher, made up these adorable little stickers that I can add a signature and a little greeting to, and I can mail to you. So if you'd just like to have one of those to put inside your book, just contact me on Ravelry and I'd be happy to mail it to you.
How cool is that? So, yeah, so Elizabeth says it's on her wish list, and Shannon says it's a classic to own for sure. Roxy says all your books are great. I told you you were going to get lots of love today. Kay
Thanks
says,
so much, guys. I was having a bad day and now I'm not.
oh no, next week I talked to Deborah yesterday in preparation for today, and I told her, I said, you're going to get so much love tomorrow. So, we knitters appreciate when somebody basically devotes their life to us, having a better experience knitting, because, we don't just knit because we need something to do with our hands. I mean, we knit to express ourselves, and it's always nice to express ourselves and actually feel good about it afterwards.
And you
So,
know, Beth, the thing is about doing a book is it's so tricky when you sit down with a topic and you want to. I've had years of experience as a professional designer, and I know how to make things fit, but how do you present that material in a clear and accessible way? That was my goal, and it took a long time, and I hope the results are worth it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really, really an amazing book. So, yeah. And Elaine says this seems like a must-have for a designer, which I agree. It's not just for knitters; it's also for designers. There's so much information in here about really, because whatever you knit, even if it's in a sample size, it still needs to fit and flatter. I mean,
And
that's
you
what.
still, right, and you still need to understand garment types and how they work. Even if you're into modular garments and geometric shapes and things that are wildly shaped, you still have to consider the body beneath. And this book allows you to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And Kay wants to know, is it available in the UK?
It is. It definitely is. I believe the folks who distribute for Rowan are the distributors in the UK.
There you go. Good news.
Yep.
So, yes, so our friends across the pond will be knitting sweaters that fit as well.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm glad. I'm glad everybody will be.
Yes, we should ban baggy sweaters, right? So, yeah, and never again have a sweater that sits in the back of your closet because it just doesn't fit. So,
Well, you know what? It's a way to honor what you do, Beth, and a way to honor craftsmen as well as your understanding of garments and the kinds of gifts that you give people. I just wanted to empower people to have a more successful garment making experience. And you'll see when you read the book that I make a big deal about having a garment maker's mindset. It's a really important thing and it's an empowering place to be.
there you go. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. I think this,
My pleasure, Beth. Thank you for having me and for
oh,
everybody for
always.
showing an interest in this book that I spent so much time on and I hope is a rewarding addition to everyone's library.
Yeah, I think it's going to be on a lot of people's Christmas wish lists. So thank you so much,
Thanks again.
Deborah. And
All right.
once you dig out from underneath this book, I'm sure there's something else in the works, and you'll come back and chat with us then.
I'd love to. I have a lot of projects going right now and I'd love to share them with you, Beth. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, and everyone stick around because I'm about to give away a book. And thanks again.